Right friends, welcome back to lecture. This is the 40th week from 28th September to 4th October. We are going to deliberate important issues of the week. First and the foremost is India pledges to cut carbon emissions intensity by 35%. Second point is India announces midday meal rules as per the National Food Security Act. It includes this midday meal scheme also, and now rules are announced after the incident at Agra where around 90 children were hospitalized. Two consecutive drought years of 2014 and 2015. This year the rainfall is around 14% below normal. Penetration of crop insurance scheme, government says 23% is covered. Government unveils Green Highways Policy 2015. We are going to discuss about what is meant by Green Highways Policy. RBI cuts policy rates by 50 basis points. Total 125 basis points cut since January. That is 1.25% cut in repo rate. Astrosat, country's first space observatory. What are the advantages of having a space observatory? Right Livelihood Awards, or otherwise known as Alternate Nobel, were announced. India pledges to cut emissions, carbon emissions intensity by 35% by 2030 in comparison to 2005 levels. What exactly is carbon emissions and why they are so important? Before learning all these things, let us go back to sun. Inside the sun, fusion takes place. Because of fusion, lot of heat is generated, and inside the core of the sun, around 15 million Kelvin is reached, the intensity of heat, and every second 600 million tons of hydrogen is converted to helium. In the process, lot of energy is released in the sun, and that energy travels through vacuum in the form of electromagnetic waves so as to reach the earth in 8 minutes at the speed of light. Speed of light, all of you are well aware, speed of light is 3 into 10 to the power 8 meters per second, or you can say 3 lakh kilometers per second, and this electromagnetic radiation in the form of electromagnetic waves reaches earth traveling at speed of light, and after hitting the earth something is absorbed, something is reflected, and in the process the greenhouse gases, predominantly carbon dioxide, traps that heat. It will not allow this heat to escape. I have already told you the electromagnetic radiation or heat waves, you can say, travels from sun to earth, and ultimately earth absorbs something and something is reflected back, but the atmosphere close to earth is with carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, and it traps the heat, because of which the temperature on earth increases. In fact, because of greenhouse gases only, mankind is able to live on earth, but the increase in greenhouse gases is the cause of worry. Because of the reason, when the greenhouse gases are increased, heat will be trapped more, and due to which the temperatures will rise. When the temperature on earth rises, what will happen? Icy glaciers in Arctic, Antarctic regions will be melted, because of which there will be rise in the sea levels. When there is a rise in the sea levels, what will happen? The coastal areas will be worst affected, because several island countries in this world are not much higher elevation in comparison to sea level. So, because of these reasons, this greenhouse gas emissions or carbon emissions took center stage. And another point I would like to tell you, this greenhouse gas emissions if you look at it, as per the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in the year 2004, total greenhouse gas emissions at the global level, if you see, please look into this, carbon dioxide is predominant. This is at global level. Individual countries may vary, but at global level, carbon dioxide, because of burning of fossil fuels, the release of carbon dioxide is 57%. Because of deforestation, 17%. Next one is methane. Next one is nitrous oxide. So, out of these, carbon dioxide is predominant, constituting around 74% of entire greenhouse gases. So, the release of carbon dioxide is to be controlled. And another point I would like to tell you, in the year 1750, that is considered as pre-industrial level. Till 1750, there is no industrial activity in the world. Almost all the industries started subsequent to 1750. So, subsequent to 1750, lot of industrialization took place across the world, first in European countries, subsequently in America, subsequently in Asia. Now, in the year 1750, carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere were 280 parts per million. In the year 1750, carbon dioxide was 280 parts per million, and now it is close to 400 parts per million, almost an increase of more than 40% during the past 265 years. Ultimately, because of this, temperatures are rising, and the target is to limit the temperature rise in comparison to 1750 by 2 degrees centigrade. Please remember these figures. Ultimately, all this action plan is to limit the increase of temperature by 2 degrees centigrade only. Because of that, now Paris Climate Summit is going to take place from November 30, and all the countries were advised to give their carbon reduction targets, carbon emissions reduction targets, and these are known as INDCs, intended nationally determined contributions. Intended nationally determined contributions. And India recently submitted its INDC with regard to carbon emissions to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. Around 196 are the members of this UNFCCC, that is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and India submitted its reduction targets. Each and every country is submitting their reduction targets, and in this backdrop, I think you are now clear what is the significance of reducing carbon emissions, right? So, let us look at the India's INDCs, that is intended nationally determined contributions. India stated 4 points primarily. First and the foremost is, it aims to cut its carbon emissions per unit of GDP. Please remember carefully, it intends to cut the carbon emissions per unit of GDP by 33 to 35% of 2005 levels by 2030. Per unit of GDP, carbon emission intensity will be reduced by 33 to 35% by 2030 in comparison to 2005. That is the first one. And second important aspect is, by the year 2030, the component of power generation by non-fossil fuels such as solar energy, wind energy. You may ask, what is the fossil fuel? Fossil fuels are oil, natural gas, coal. These are all fossil fuels. What is meant by fossil? Fossil is nothing but dead remains of plants and animals. After millions of years, that energy will be released in the form of coal, oil or natural gas. So, fossil fuel energy releases carbon into the atmosphere, and non-fossil fuels such as wind energy, solar energy, they are renewable energy, and in this case no carbon emissions will take place. So, the government intends to make the share of this by 40% of the total power generation by the year 2030. Third important point is India will create carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2 equivalent. What is meant by carbon sink? Which will absorb carbon dioxide? Vegetation will absorb carbon dioxide. So generate or develop forests. And there are other aspects also which can absorb carbon dioxide. Afforestation or growing vegetation is one example. So develop forests, develop vegetation, that is known as carbon sink. That means sinking carbon dioxide, that means absorbing carbon dioxide. So India will generate carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2 equivalent by the year 2030. And next important point is at least $2.5 trillion is required to meet these targets by 2030. So these are the 4 important points as India committed to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and these are going to be discussed from November 30 in the summit at Paris, right? So this is all about this carbon emissions, right? And if you want more about this iron disease, please listen to news analysis and features this week only. Right, let us move on to the next issue. The next issue is India announces midday meal rules 2015. In fact, this midday meal scheme is a part of National Food Security Act 2013. And all of you are well aware, National Food Security Act is basically providing subsidized food grains to 2/3 of the country's population, which constitutes 75% of rural population, 50% of urban population at subsidized prices, rice, wheat and coarse grains. And this midday meal scheme is also part of this. And recently government released midday meal rules and regulations, and the second important point I would like to tell you, the government released these regulations subsequent to the incidents in Agra where 90 children fell ill after consuming milk, right? So what are these rules? Please look into these 4 items. One is state governments are responsible for implementation, and at the same time they have to fix the responsibility on the person or agency if the meals are not provided for 3 consecutive school days or 5 days in a month. If meals under midday meal scheme is not provided for 3 consecutive school days or 5 days in a month, then ultimately responsibility is to be fixed by state government. Basically, state governments are responsible for implementation. Second is monthly testing of meals is made mandatory at the accredited laboratories. Third important point is children with 6 to 14 age group who attend school shall be provided with a hot cooked meal with nutritional standards as prescribed on all the school working days except on school holidays. Fourth important point is nutritional standards are also prescribed for primary level. The nutritional standard is primary level means up to class 5th. The nutritional standard is 450 calories with 12 gram of protein. At the same time, 700 calories with 20 gram of protein for upper primary level, that is from class 6th beyond, right? So 6 to 14 age group, they are categorized into 2 groups, up to primary level, beyond primary level. So 450 calories and 12 grams of protein for primary level and 700 calories with 20 gram of protein for upper primary level, right? So these guidelines will be applicable from the date of Gazette notification, right friends? Look at the next one, consecutive drought. You may ask, what is drought? When the government considers it as drought, right? Southwest monsoon. In India, southwest monsoon is predominant, and the season of southwest monsoon is from June 1 right up to September 30. So for this year, southwest monsoon season ended, and government has taken 50-year average, which is known as long period average. The 50-year average or long period average from 1951 to 2000 is 89 centimeters of rainfall. If in any year during this monsoon season of southwest monsoon, if the rainfall falls below 10%, it is considered as a drought year. This year it is below 14%. That's why this year is a drought year, 2015. Similarly, 2014 was also drought year. I think the rainfall was 12% less than normal. So, 2 consecutive drought years, and this type of consecutive drought years occurred only 2 times in the century since 1900. First time in the year 1904 and 1905. And subsequently 1965 and 1966. So, 2 consecutive drought years, and the people's suffering or agrarian distress will be known after some time. Right friends, penetration of crop insurance is just 23%. Government reported to the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance. The committee was headed by Veerappa Moily, Congress MP, and government reported to this Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance that 23% of the farmers are covered under crop insurance scheme. That means 3 crore 69 lakh farmers were covered, and the 4 agricultural insurance schemes I listed here, you can go through it. And overall, if you look at it, in fact, the actual penetration, though the government stated it as 23%, but as per the news reports, the penetration of crop insurance in the country is not that high as per the emanating news reports. Right friends, you can go through this if you want more information. Let us look at the next issue. Government unveils Green Highways Policy 2015. What is meant by Green Highways Policy? Green Highways Policy is developing greenery along the national highways by planting of trees and shrubs. Shrubs are small, and by planting trees and shrubs along the national highways, and how the money will come? The money will come from 1% of the total project cost. The Minister for Highways says that every year we are spending 1 lakh crores of rupees on road development, national highways development, and if you calculate 1%, it comes to rupees 1000 crore. So, the government intention is to spend 1000 crores every year for greening of the highways. That is a part of the Green Highways Policy of 2015, and this year 6000 kilometers will be covered initially, and 2 satellites. As per the government's notification, 2 satellites will cover each and every tree planted. These 2 satellites are Gagan and Bhuvan. These 2 satellites will cover each and every tree, and 3 best performers will be awarded each year on World Environment Day, which falls on June 5. Right? Let us hope to see lot of greenery along the national highways whenever we travel on the national highways. Friends, let us look at economy events. Economy events, important event is the Reserve Bank of India cuts its policy rates by 50 basis points or 0.5%. Very few people expected Raghuram Rajan to do this, but he has done it. Since January, Raghuram Rajan reduced repo rate by 1.25% or 125 basis points. Please don't forget, 1 basis point is 0.01% in banking parlance. Normally they talk in terms of basis points. So 100 basis points are 1%, and RBI reduced the repo rate or the short term interest rate. Why there is a lot of significance for repo rate? Because repo rate gives a signal to the market with regard to the short-term interest rates across the financial market. The second reason is other rates are linked with repo rate. So, all of you are well aware, reverse repo rate is 1% below. Marginal standing facility and bank rate are 1% higher. So, because of this linkage, this repo rate assumed a lot of significance, and the other points as enunciated by the Reserve Bank Governor are in future this foreign portfolio investments in government securities will be allowed up to 5% of total government securities outstanding by the year 2018 March. By March 2018, foreign portfolio investors will be allowed to invest up to 5% of government securities. At present, the limit is probably in $billion, it is $30 billion, and government will increase it to 5% of total outstanding debt by the month of March 2018. That is another significant development, and at present the statutory liquidity ratio is 21.5%, and starting from next year that will be reduced by 0.25% every quarter to reduce it by 1% by March 2017. And the Reserve Bank of India forecasted growth rate for this year to be 7.4% instead of 7.6%, and inflation by January 2016 is expected to be 5.8%. So, this is as per monetary policy of Reserve Bank of India. And when the interest rates are reduced, what does it imply? One plus point, one negative point. What is the plus point? Plus point is when the short-term interest rate or repo rate is reduced, it will have its cascading effect on the overall interest rate structure. Banks will reduce their base rates, because of which cost of credit or interest rates will reduce, cost of credit will reduce, and because of which growth will take place. That is theoretical point. But practically, if you look at it, there are several other constraints of not having the potential GDP growth. India is expected to grow at around 7.3 or 7.4%, but the potential for India is to grow at 10%. It is not growing at its potential, and because of that reason, the lower cost of credit may not translate into the GDP growth straight away, because India has got several other structural bottlenecks in the economy. Right? Theoretically speaking, growth has to increase, but the other side is when the interest rates are reduced, then deposit rates will reduce. Because of reduction in fixed deposit rates, there is every possibility people may move from fixed deposits or bank deposits to other form of physical assets or other form of financial assets. That's why the savings may come down in the country. Already savings to GDP ratio is coming down in the country because of more consumption expenditure by the people of the country in recent times, and it may further come down when the interest rates are reduced. And the other important point I would like to tell you, why the credit offtake in the banking system is not satisfactory. Always Raghuram Rajan is talking about, I am reducing repo rate, but banks are not reducing base rates. And even after base rates are reduced, the credit offtake is not satisfactory. What are the reasons I listed out here? This is risk aversion among the banks for lending to the corporate sector. Banks are not showing interest for lending to corporate sector because of the reason lot of these corporate loans, several corporate loans became non-performing assets because of the default by the corporates. Second important point is high leverage of the corporates, that is high debt equity ratio. Debt equity ratio, that means when the company has got 100 crores of rupees, they are taking 500, 600 crores borrowing and they are trying to establish a company. That means the debt equity ratio is very high for the companies in recent times. Next, third point is the investment climate, though increased or improved substantially in recent times, is not up to the mark. Make in India campaign is not taking off on the expected lines. The last one is heightened global uncertainties, that is, India's exports are falling continuously for 9 months in a row, and global commodity prices have fallen, including aluminium, including steel, including oil. So, because of these uncertainties, now the credit offtake is not satisfactory. Right friends, miscellaneous events. AstroSat, country's first space observatory, was launched. You may be knowing about Hubble. Hubble is the space observatory launched by NASA 25 years back with the assistance of European Space Agency and other agencies. And Hubble is the telescope which is working as a space observatory. India so far has not got any space observatory. You may ask a pertinent question, what is the advantage of having space observatory? Space observatory has got advantage because it can view the various processes taking place in the universe more clearly than observing from ground. It can observe in various bands of electromagnetic spectrum. In various bands of electromagnetic spectrum, it can observe the processes taking place in the universe more clearly. I will tell you, for example, if the observatory is situated on the ground level, then atmosphere is the biggest problem, because whatever the rays coming from the distant objects like stars may not reach the ground level, because atmosphere obstructs ultraviolet rays, low energy X-rays, high energy X-rays. These are all will be obstructed by the atmosphere. So the observatory or telescope beyond the atmospheric conditions can view the distant objects like neutron stars, like black holes more clearly, and because of that reason this space observatory assumed significance. And this ISRO launched it, PSLV-C30 rocket launched it in the orbit of around 650 kilometers height, and 1513 kg satellite was placed in the orbit, and along with this 6 more satellites were launched. Please look into this PPT. One satellite belonged to Indonesia, one belonged to Canada, 4 belonged to United States of America, and for the United States of America, India launched these satellites for the first time, and so far ISRO has launched 51 satellites for foreign countries. And about the advantages of this AstroSat, what are its implications? Please listen to news analysis of this week. We are going to deliberate in detail. Right friends, after this, the last one of the week, Right Livelihood Awards. These are called alternate Nobel. Why? I would like to tell you, Nobel Prizes are given in 6 categories, but Nobel Foundation refused to give award in the field of environment and international development. In environment and international development, Nobel Foundation refused to give award, and subsequently a German-Swedish philanthropist in the year 1980 conceived this idea to give awards in environment and international development, and accordingly this Right Livelihood Award Foundation gives the award, and these are called alternate Nobel Prizes, and the prize money here is 2 lakh euros going to be shared equally. And please don't forget, this year 4 persons were awarded this alternate Nobel, out of which one is given honorary award. He will not share the prize money, and remaining 3 will share the prize money. And this alternate Nobel is basically to recognize the efforts in environment and international development, and the details and the names I have given in this PPT. Please go through them, and he is the man behind this alternate Nobel. His name is Jacob von Uxküll, right? So with this, let us conclude this week's lecture. Please do join for news analysis and features. We are going to discuss two important aspects, that is INDCs as well as AstroSat. Right friends, have a nice day. Thank you.